Some good news on the horizon for the economy from the recent Consumer Price Index report, and it looks like we're still on the right path. But what does this mean for San Diego sellers and buyers? And loan updates coming straight from the horse's mouth, one of my preferred lenders, Anthony Beecham with Fairway. He will cover where rates are and where we can expect them to go in the near future. Lastly, updates on active homes and how fast they're getting picked up. All this covered in this week's San Diego Market Matters. I'm Karl, your San Diego Realtor. Let's get into it. This last week, the Consumer Price Index report posted, also known as the CPI. This is the report that the feds use as a tool to track our inflation. The CPI reported a 0.4% increase, and though that is slightly up from January, it was to be expected. And if you compare 2023 to 2024 February, they both came in at that same 0.4% increase. So there's some consistency there that shows us a pattern of spending and cost. Overall, and this is what is most significant in the grand scheme of things. If you look at the trend from mid-ish 2022 to now, there's a downward trend on inflation. This shows that with the increase in rates from the feds, inflation is coming down. So what they're doing is working. Now, many are still feeling the cost of living creeping up, and that's very, very reasonable. The Fed's goal is to get inflation down to 2%, so they still have a little ways to go. So what does this mean for us here in San Diego? Well, it's likely that we're gonna continue to see the cost of living continue to creep up for a little bit longer. With the San Diego housing market, we're still seeing pricing going up, but it is much, much lower than it has been over recent years and even months. There are fewer and fewer properties getting multiple offers, and sellers are having less negotiating power. Things like small credits and repairs are starting to become more frequently granted to buyers in negotiations. Now, it's not always guaranteed, but it is more reasonable to ask from the buyer's side now. And this is all coming as a result of elevated interest rates on mortgages. With that, there's less buyers in the market and sellers don't have as many offers to choose from. Now, this begs the question, if the real estate market is still going up, how likely is it that rates are going to come down? And while on the topic of rates, let's check in with Anthony Beecham at Fairway and see what he has to say.
So right now we're looking at rates getting back into 7%. A couple months ago, we were seeing rates easily into the mid sixes, maybe 6.75, but right now we are definitely back into the sevens, maybe the 7.25. And that really is depending on what we're looking at program-wise, whether we're going conventional, FHA, VA. Of course, there's so many different compensating factors that are going to come into play. You have to look at your borrower's credit score. You're looking at debt-to-income ratios. You're looking at loan amounts as well. So there's so many different factors that we have to take into consideration when these rates are actually being determined. But on an overall basis right now, we're easily seeing rates back into the 7%.
This is radically different from what we expected. In December of 2023, the feds announced that they were expecting 6 rate drops in 2024. This stirred up a lot of interest in buyers that were sitting on the fence. In addition, market expectations were that this would cause a buyer frenzy as it would allow even more buyers into a market with an already limited inventory.
I think when you have to look at 2024 in a whole, I think that it would be, in my opinion, not a very smart situation if we didn't see rates drop at some point this year. Not to be political, but we are in an election year. And so I would anticipate seeing rates drop at some point before November of this year. I would like to see them steadily in the low sixes, maybe in the high fives. That might be wishful thinking. But looking at what we're seeing the Fed do, originally they had spoken that we might see 3 rate drops this year. I don't know if that's being optimistic or not. We might even see just 1 rate drop this year. So we're kind of in one of those positions where there's a lot that can potentially happen. I think a lot of lenders are just holding strong right now, getting their borrowers comfortable at the existing rates with the hope of potentially being able to refinance in the years to come. But we could be seeing rates, hold steady in the 6s to low 7s for quite some time.
It's hard to imagine with rates being in the low 7s at the moment and then them getting to the low 6s or high 5s by the end of the year. Anthony does make a good point though. It is an election year, so if there was a time for the Democratic Party to make an impact on Americans' pocketbooks, it would be this year. But when should we expect that to actually happen?
I would say based off of what we're seeing in the current economy, I would say that the soonest we would potentially see rates drop would be this coming August.
Very reasonable. In June, the feds will present a summary of economic projections. This is where the feds will present if we are seeing enough of a change in cost and spending, i.e. the rate of inflation, to justify a rate drop. Why make an adjustment prior to the summary of economic projections? It's most likely the feds will just drag this out until June, present the summary of economic projections, and adjust accordingly starting in July. Some believe that if inflation shows to be under control, at best, the feds will drop rates 25 basis points 4 times between July and the end of the year. And that's if we're lucky.
So in regards to what we're seeing buyer-wise and what they're feeling, yeah, there's a lot of rate sensitivity right now because we do have people that when they look at what the rates were a couple of years ago, and if they were potentially pre-approved then but didn't purchase, their buying power has definitely been reduced. So there's a lot of people that are waiting to see what's going to happen with rates and see if they're potentially going to, hopefully go down at some point this year. The problem with that, though, is that we know that that's going to create so much more competition for everybody that's waiting in that pool for rates to drop. So what I'm really trying to get my borrowers prepared for is be comfortable with the rate and that payment that you're going to see right now, because you're going to have less competition going in when they're putting in those offers. They're going to have more success in getting their offer actually accepted. And then when the rates do drop, hopefully a significant amount, they'll be able to refinance. So it really turns into a win-win for them because, they're already comfortable with the existing payment that they have. So being able to lower that payment, it's just going to make it an even better situation for them. Like I said, we're seeing a lot of the rate sensitivity, but I think that, this is something for those that are, ready and willing to go in this market and they can stay comfortable and hold tight for a little bit of time. I think that they're going to see a lot of success in the offers that are being presented and getting into the house that they want.
I really appreciate the approach Anthony is taking here. He preps buyers financially for the rates that we have now as if they're going to stay that way for a while. The thing is there's always an opportunity present. Sometimes you have to dig for it and it doesn't always look the way you had hoped. It doesn't mean it's going to be any less profitable for you in the long run though. Now let's put this all into context. Here in San Diego right now, we're sitting around 2,700 homes on the market for sale. And in the last week, we had close to about 600 come to market. Those are additional homes. But get this, in that same week, about 500 accepted an offer and got into escrow. So over 80% of the number of homes that came on the market were immediately sucked up. And we're not even in the hotter season of selling yet, and that's right around the corner. This is affirming 2 things. 1, demand is still really high regardless of rates being where they are. Second, sellers still have the upper hand purely because buyers can either buy now or continue to pay higher and higher rents. Now again, sellers don't have the same power they had in mid-2022 and earlier, but the market is still to their benefit. And to be entirely honest, it's likely that this is going to be the case for some time going forward, especially if they drop rates by the end of this year into next year. Now, if you thought this video was valuable, please drop a like and don't forget to subscribe. If you're thinking about buying or selling here in San Diego, don't hesitate to reach out. As always, I'm Karl, your San Diego Realtor. I'll see you next video.